Now, if you are lucky enough to be getting away on a holiday this summer, no doubt you'll be keeping an eye on the current airport and airline situation. We've all heard about flights being cancelled, bags getting lost, etc. So to find out about the latest of what's going on, I'm joined now by the man who knows everything there is to know about travel. That's Eoghan Corry, the editor of Air and Travel magazine. Eoghan, how are you this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Dave. Great pleasure to talk to you.
Good indeed. In fact, with the bank holiday coming up next weekend, I want to talk to you about that too, so in case I forget, it is the bank holiday next weekend, isn't it? Yeah, it is, okay. How are things now, by the way, this Saturday afternoon, as regards flight cancellations?
Pretty good. We lost 3 flights today out of 284. We had about 312 yesterday. We're losing the TAP Portugal, the very early morning one. It's a big one for people connecting, people who go down to Brazil. Lisbon is one of the big connection points. We unexpectedly lost the afternoon Aer Lingus JFK. That's COVID absences. Bit of a stress when you've got the bigger aircraft, Dave. You need 8 cabin crew for that, and if COVID strikes, it's a little bit vulnerable to that. And we've lost one of the Ryanairs to Belgium. That's probably a strike action in Belgium by cabin crew. A lot of strikes lined up against Ryanair, but the only ones that have had any impact are the flights to Belgium. A lot of Spanish strikes this week, not a single flight cancelled.
Well, are the particular destinations more of a problem than other ones?
Not really. We have airport mandated cancellations, which are more a problem than the COVID absence cancellations, if that makes sense. And one of the reasons is Aer Lingus managed to hire in some lovely aircraft from third party, which come completely with the crew. Some of the listeners would have been on a lovely Boeing 777 down to Barcelona, and it's not a direct Aer Lingus flight. So Aer Lingus have more or less cope with those. Most of the issues now are big airports like Heathrow, Amsterdam and Gatwick, but it's especially Heathrow in the last week are saying, asking airlines to cancel a certain amount of their flights, a small percentage. Big problem for Aer Lingus. Not many Irish people realise Aer Lingus are the 4th biggest air operator in Heathrow. They've been there from the time the airport was open, and they've a lot of slots. So when they're asked to cancel, they do get impacted. So we're seeing Heathrow a problem, we're seeing Amsterdam a problem, but it varies by destination after that. Ryanair's strikes have had no impact on Spain and Portugal, but they have a little bit on Belgium.
OK, let's take up the word compensation before I take up the big word baggage, which is this. Are you entitled to any compensation if the flight is cancelled?
You are indeed, if it's not extraordinary circumstances. And this is where we would probably be playing it around in consumer forums first and then in the court system afterwards. But if your flight is cancelled, the airline has a very strict set of obligations. Doesn't really matter what causes the cancellation, they have to get you to where you're supposed to go. Not an airport 70 kilometres away, Dave. They've got to get you exactly where you're supposed to go, and it's their problem. You don't have to start looking at booking.
Funny, you say extraordinary circumstances. Is that the old force majeure thing? Is that like lava from a volcano hitting the just at that stage? Or
a bit of that. We had one of those AFIAL and O'Cool back in 2010, but with it does apply to storms. It does apply to strikes. Right. It doesn't apply to COVID absences. I don't think it does, and that's where it'll all be played out. But that's only a compensation issue. The out-of-pocket expenses, they still have to fork that out. There's a very clear timetable that as the flight is delayed, for a certain number of hours, you have a cup of coffee and a certain distance, and then it goes up to meals and things like that. The legislation goes back 20 years. It applies to phone calls as well, in the days before everyone had mobile phones. But it's pretty clear cut, and it's been well tested. This is really important as well, Dave, that it's been well tested through the court system of every country in Europe and up to European court level. So airlines pretty much know where they stand, and consumers know where they stand. It's not a big deal. It's not up to every consumer, by the way, to know the law on this. Once they think that they require compensation, or then there are problems getting their out-of-pocket expenses back from the airline, there is an arbiter officially appointed, flightrights.ie. It's a website. It's not just a website, one of these legal guys saying, oh, we'll help you. It's actually the mandated government website for the Commission of Aviation Regulation. Their job is to intervene and to check with with the airline, have the rights been completely met? Have the obligations been met? And if they haven't, they intervene on your part. Right. It takes that pressure off the consumer.
Okay, so flightrights.ie, I presume
that's the one.
It's not the new kind of RITE, it's RIGHTS, is it?
It's absolutely okay. RIGHTS, you know, the old spelling, primary school, fourth class, Dave. I know you were top of your class.
If you're such an expert in all this, primary school, then tell me about the Montreal Convention. No, I bet you don't know. Do you know what that is, do you? Or the EU 261?
EU 261 is the European law that sets out your consumer rights. Very controversial at the time, but it's been well
just
tested.
Just as a matter of interest,
and it works.
EU 261 applies to us, I presume. Does it apply to people from England?
Interestingly enough, they have opted out of it, but they have a sort of a EU 261 light, which they have carrying on. Now, as Brexit gets legs, it probably will go the two different directions, but the rights are still, they still apply. Yeah, the reality is that in theory and law, a good test now would mean that they wouldn't apply anymore. They've left the European Union.
Okay, well now, Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine, who knows everything. Here we go. Baggage. What's happening with the bags, Eoghan? What's happening?
Oh, the bags. Everything has shifted to bags now. We have a baggage mountain in several airports in Europe, including Dublin. What Dublin have been doing is they've been shifting the bags onto airside, from airside onto landside. That means that you don't need a security clearance to go through, to look through them. That was a big issue for couriers.
Wait a minute, am I allowed
There's an
to
army
just
of couriers delivering the bags.
Is it like in a particular, like it's not just kind of beside the baggage carousel anymore? Are you telling me there's an actual kind of a coordinator or cut-off area, and I'm allowed to walk through and just see if I can find it?
No, they don't want passengers coming in, impossible to manage. What they're doing, it's up to the airline to find the passenger, and it's up to the airline to match that barcode with the passenger and get it to you. An army of couriers out there. But you're absolutely right. There was an awful lot of baggage sitting in that baggage hold for a long time.
And how long are people typically, if you can just say that, in general, waiting for their bags these days?
And most people getting them 4 or 5 days. Before COVID, 1-2 days. After that was a problem. It's designated lost if it's 21 days. And the Montreal Convention you mentioned, that sets out the compensation. It's not very high. It's about €1,500, which is a lot for if you've just got your socks in it, but not if you've got gadgets in it.
Okay, and are we talking stolen, delayed, lost, destroyed, whatever it happens to be, compensation, have to wait 21 days, do you?
21 days before it's written off. If it shows up after that, it's regarded as a bonus. That would be a long time, but what we've seen is Toronto, JFK, Amsterdam, and especially Heathrow, bags that were supposed to be transferred at those airports not being transferred and sitting around for a while. Hamburg Airport had to find an entire warehouse for the left bags. The bags are a big problem in transfer flights, Dave, not so much point to point. That's why Ryanair are going around so proudly with their chest puffed out. They don't actually do transfers. If you fly to Stansted and get another Ryanair flight, you have to take your bag off and put it back on again. It's a big problem for Aer Lingus because they're the big server to Heathrow. Everyone coming through Heathrow that loses their bag there, they're waiting at the carousel cell in Dublin and shouting at Aer Lingus, where's my bag? They've no idea.
But I mean, like incoming flights, connecting flights, bags are not coming in at the same time as the passengers. Maybe they are moved to a separate baggage handling facility these days, are they?
Absolutely, and the big problem, everything in the airport, security queues, Aer Lingus's cabin, everything has been, they rolled down the staff a little bit during COVID. They didn't ramp it up fast enough. That's really the problem with the baggage. No matter what you do, no matter what technology you have, you still need a pair of hands to lift those bags, put them on the aircraft. 50% of them are lost, not in the terminal at all, but going from one aircraft to another in big terminal, big hub points like Heathrow.
And I presume the reason for the baggage problems, I mean, I was in South Dublin only last week, walking by a very famous pub, and the pub was shut at 6 o'clock in the day because it said staff shortages on the thing. I presume it's a staff thing, is it?
Absolutely, all the way. They're 15% short of the staff that they need across all the airport services. That's why people are putting up on social media about the toilets not being clean, all of that. There are extra issues at the airport with security clearances to go airside, but everybody is short of staff, and there's a recruitment crisis which no listener needs introduction to.
And there's also, you well know, you mentioned going back to national school earlier on, so I'll say it again. In those days, you could ring up and you could talk to a human being, and we all know the thing. So getting through to airlines, communication, is it stating the bleeding obvious if I say it's an issue?
Collapsed. The call centres were all wound down long before COVID. The best way to get contact is the web chat is a pretty good way, and a direct tweet sometimes gets a response. But if they're short of cabin crew and short of pilots, they're not going to be overstaffed on the communication side. A lot of problems with the flight cancellations as well has been conveying the information to passengers. They haven't really not been treated well in terms of being told what's going on.
Yeah, you know, something something I haven't done, but I'm sure if you're 2 or 3 people coming back, say, to Dublin Airport or something, and your bags are arriving on carousel too, would you recommend that actually one of you should try 4 and 5 as well, because you might actually find it there?
Well, the problem isn't it coming on the wrong carousel. The problem is that it never gets loaded in the first place.
Yeah.
Give you an example of the scale of it. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say this, but there are between 30 and 40 bags that are delayed, that are coming from a previous flight on a lot of the flights coming into Dublin Airport at the moment. It's really, if it's loaded in wherever it is, it's likely to show up in the carousel you want in Dublin Airport. The problem is it not being loaded, and there have been issues with it not being loaded outbound as well. We also have occasionally pretty spectacular stuff like the entire aircraft taken off with no bags. That's happened on a couple of the Toronto flights with WestJet because the captain was told he'd have to wait 5-6 hours before the baggage was loaded. So we've had baggage strike in Switzerland. Flights came in with no bags. All sorts of shenanigans all through the system.
So are you saying the pilot made a decision, like, I'm a passenger guy, not a bag guy, to hell with this, I'm off?
Which side is he on? That's pretty much it. He might have taken a poll among the passengers, do you want to come or do you leave your golf clubs behind? But it is an issue that, that there isn't enough information coming sometimes to the cabin crew as well, or to the pilot, the captain of the flight as well, on what's happening in the baggage hall. And strange things happen in the baggage hall at the best of times. There are about 2% of bags never get found, by the way. That's pre-COVID. I'm sure that figure or pre the current crisis, I'm sure that figure might increase now.
And you know the Apple AirTags. Would you? Oh, you're laughing. Why? Are they not a good idea? No?
Well, the Apple AirTag is great if it actually locates it, close to where you are. If your Apple AirTag is showing you it's in Kuala Lumpur.
Well, at least you
but
know
there is another issue with the Apple AirTag, and that is that they ban mobile phones, the use of mobile phones on flights for a reason. I do think there'd be some intervention at some stage about Apple AirTags. If you've got 400 of them on the same flight, and navigation systems and all of that, there may be issues down the road.
One simple thing you could do, which I've never done either, take a photo of your bag. Yeah.
Oh, really important. And the black Samsonite. Can you find my black Samsonite? It's always good to have your I love Dave Fanning sticker or something on the side of it. It's also a good idea.
We should never find it then.
It's also a good idea to photograph the contents of your bag for when it goes missing. Yeah. Don't put anything in your bag that you don't expect to lose. That's a pretty central core value. But take a photograph of the contents, so when it does go missing, you've got something to show them. And also a photograph of the bag is very handy, because somebody who is not you will be going through a baggage hall to try to find the lost bags.
Right, indeed. Well, listen, look, happy trails. Eoghan Corry, thanks a million for talking to us, editor of Air and Travel.
Always a joy. Thank you very much.
Come on, take it easy, Eoghan. Good luck. Bye.
Dave Fanning on 2FM.